I think now, though, we had a wonderful guest, as mentioned earlier on, and that is the developer or the head of the Talkback development from Google. And he sat down and chat with us yesterday. So we had a little chat together with Brian Kemler, and now we're plugging in that interview. We are thankful that we're joined by Brian Kemler, the head management of Talkback. And we are so excited because this is one of the big ones we've been wanting to talk about. And we are thankful, Brian, that you are with us here today to talk about Talkback and all that it entails. Brian?
Thank you. Yeah, so great to be here. Thank you, Warren, for the invitation. And I'm always happy to talk to the community about Talkback.
I have my co-hosts with me here today, and these are my best buddies in the world. Miriam?
Hey, Oren, and hey, Brian. It's an amazing, opportunity to be here and talk about how accessibility goes in Google, especially with Talkback, since it's the main screen reader that we have on Android.
And the co-pilot.
Hi, Brian. It's very exciting to talk to you about Talkback. And I used to every day ask Warren, when is the interview? When is the interview? So it is very exciting.
That's great. I'm excited. You're excited. I'm excited too.
Brian, how about we start off about talking about the history of Talkback? I know we've come a long way. Those of us who've been there as far back as 2010, 2011, or whenever, went through those birth pains of maturing with Talkback. And so it is important that we don't forget our history and where we're coming from, because that gives us a better perspective as to where we're heading. So let's talk a little bit about the history of Talkback, when it first started, and then where we are and all that in between stuff.
Awesome. Yeah. So Talkback has a very, very long history. It has been around for about 12 years, and it basically started as a project on our Android framework and Android research team with a pretty famous person from the community, TV Raman, as well as somebody who is still on the not just Android accessibility, but the overall Android framework engineering team, Svet Ganov. And both of those two people are still with us today, but we have built a bigger and to some extent newer team of people, including myself, who has only been working on Talkback for 2 years. But I know the people, I know the technology, I know a little bit about the history. And I'm more than happy to share from my standpoint some of the things that I think have been, consistent themes throughout Talkback's history, and hopefully continue up to this day. So Talkback is really unique and different from any other product, right? Like a lot of people, maybe not your audience, but if I talk to my mom, if I talk to someone on the street, people think I work on an app. And I never describe Talkback as an app, because Talkback is unlike any other app, because it's meant to make every other app and Android accessible to people who do not use a display, which is typically people who are blind or have some form of low vision, as I think your audience knows. And as such, that's a really daunting challenge, right? Like,
Yes.
How do you make something work without a key ingredient, right? Like our, right, wrong, or indifferent, our operating systems have been built for people who use displays, right? And so now you're taking the display out of that equation, and you're saying, oh, well, the thing has to work, right? It's kind of like taking, taking a car and taking the wheels off and saying, how do you make the car work, right? And it's like, well, you build a different type of car. Maybe you build a helicopter. Maybe you build an airplane. But the thing that does that, or enables the car to drive without the tires, is something that requires a lot more specialization and a lot more close cooperation and working with the community. And so I think we've always viewed, since Talkback started, we've always viewed it as more of a system UI, or even potentially like an OS for people who don't use a display. And So I think that's one thing that's important. A second thing that's, I think, super important and that we take really near and dear to our respective hearts is building with the community, right? And so that doesn't mean we're building something for someone, we're building something with someone. And we try to do that in two ways. To the greatest extent possible, we try to hire basically people who are users of the product. So blind people, blind designers, blind product managers, blind and engineers, and so forth, and bring them into that internal development process. But we also, as Warren, as you and I were connected, we also do that through our external trusted tester program. And so that's a program where we have about 100 screen reader users from all walks of life. We provide phones and we have lively conversations and debates, and we roll out features early, certainly not often enough, but at least a lot more often recently, which is amazing, and we're excited about that. And we roll out these features, and we'll come up with designs, and then we'll iterate on those designs based on that feedback with the community. And so that's how I think we think of building with rather than building for.
Thank you so much, Brian. That's excellent. Because I remember, when we first started with Talkback, and the very first time, though, that we, as blind people, got that capability of starting Talkback on our own, I remember that first time was that ice cream sandwich and that drawing of a rectangle to enable accessibility. It was a hit and miss for many. And then with 4.1 Jelly Bean, that first ability to start Talkback with the two-finger hold down, I think was revolutionary and changes accessibility from there forward, and moving to using the two-volume key hold down in Oreo. And now that is gone, the two-finger hold down, for some reason, Brian, I got tears in my eyes. That is gone in Android 12. So that was the first thing I noticed, because I wanted to try that when I first jumped on the developer preview 1. I think that was February 18th when I installed that thing. When it came out, I jumped on it right away to try it. And my first thought was to try to see if that two-finger hold down was still there. And then I realized it wasn't. And I kept trying it with each updates, developer 2, 3, and then beta 1 and beta 2. And still, I noticed that was gone. So I said, now that is gone with the win. Now we have the two-volume hold down instead of the two-finger hold down, which used to be another way of doing it. Now, looking back at that, Brian, we have advanced a lot in Talkback. It was very rudimentary, to put it mildly, in so many ways. Going back to those days, with ice cream and jelly bean. And of course, we saw improvements along the way. And now, here we are today in Android Accessibility 9.1. How have your 2 years been, Brian? How has it been? Has it been of a challenge? What are some of the big problems? Because you mentioned earlier on, it's like driving a car and you're trying to redesign the car. Or what do you do? Do you take off the wheels, or do you try to find a way of making it work with what you have? How have those 2 years been for you as an individual working on this project?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Warren. So I think it's been amazing. It's also been, it's been challenging. And so, just so your audience knows, I am a sighted user, so I'm not a full-time screen reader user, because I don't have to rely on one. I obviously use one in my job. And so I think one of the first challenges was just building empathy and understanding how people use screen readers, and what some of the challenges are there. We couldn't do what we do without you guys who are in our trusted tester program. Another challenge, I think, was we had a lot of research and we had a lot of feedback that basically our users told us that they wanted a more modern gesture system, and that the menus were kind of confusing. They didn't know when to use the local or when to use the global menu, and that there were just some sort of challenges with how complex Talkback was, particularly from the menuing and gesturing standpoint. And so we went back to the drawing boards, and I'm going to talk a bit about gestures. If you want me to talk about menus, I can talk about that too. But I think gestures illustrates some of the challenges. So internally, we had a lot of debates where we're like, okay, do we completely overhaul the gesture system from scratch, right? Do we create the gesture system we would create if we were building a screen reader from the very beginning? And for a while we were thinking about doing that, but then we felt that was going to really disrupt the user community a lot, and we didn't want people to have to change the tires of the car in the middle of driving it. We thought that would be too much, but we still wanted to launch multi-finger gestures. So instead of making it an either or, we made it a both and. And we thought, and I think, Warren, you're very familiar with this history, but we thought we had landed on this amazing system. And, we had so many debates and healthy conversations and philosophical conversations, internally. And back in the summer of 2020, back in August, we rolled it out to you guys in the Trusted Tester program. And we got some very stern feedback. We got a lot of feedback that said, hey, this isn't quite what we wanted. And then we moved mountains to update, take that feedback in and then re-roll the gestures out. And we even did a special, which is internally pretty much unheard of. But we did an over-the-air update for a number of the different users so that they could get the late breaking framework updates so that we could give you the new gesture set based on your feedback. And then on that second iteration, we got great feedback. So we're super happy. So, basically working as intended. We, do a lot of thinking, a lot of research, and a lot of effort when we build any feature. But really the rubber meets the road when it meets with the users, in this case, the community. And then, we take that feedback and we change. And we're very happy, and we've gotten very good feedback from the community. And now Talkback is, more in line with the industry. It's easier to use, it's easier to learn. The gestures are a bit easier to perform than the single finger gestures. And that's, that's good. That's good for that's good for people. And I think particularly it's an easier system to learn if you are new to a screen reader. So if you're using a screen, if you've used a screen reader since you were born and you had all the training and education around it, it is probably not going to move the needle for you. But if you're, suddenly lose sight, right? And you have to learn a screen reader later on in life, then I think that's really where it's going to make a big difference. And then, for the people who are the pro screen reader users, it also makes a difference there. I don't want to undersell that. I think it makes a difference there in terms of just providing more options. More options is good. More customization is good. Every user, particularly in the accessibility community, wants to do things a little bit differently. Yeah.
Now, one of our co-hosts, Edward Green, who is unable to be with us today, wants me to ask you this question. When you first rolled out version 9.0, the multi-finger gestures actually worked with his OnePlus phone. But with the 9.1 introduction, however, those multi-finger gesture support were gone. And I also noticed, on my Pixel 2 XL running Android 11, that is not part of it. And, I love my Pixel 2. It's probably one of the most responsive phones when it comes to using the keyboard. For some reason, that phone was so optimized. I don't know what Google did, but to this day.
Interesting.
Yes, I'm telling you, if I compared Pixel 2, typing on a Pixel 2 with my Pixel 4, it's a much better experience on the Pixel 2. The keyboard is so responsive, but the multi-finger gestures aren't there, and that's one of the things that Edward is kind of upset about it, and with a lot of other blind people on our mailing list talking about the fact that this is available only for Pixel phones. At least you have to have a Pixel 3 and higher, and you have to have certain security patch, which makes me believe it was like a feature drop or something, or Samsung using 3.x, One UI 3.x. So I was under the impression, Brian, that this was something that was going to be supporting the API for Android 11, regardless as to whether one has, an Asus phone or a Pixel or Samsung phone. What happened here?
Yeah, so great question. So basically what we want is we want every version of Talkback on Android 12 or higher to be able to have the multi-finger gestures. The reason why there was a more limited rollout, and to the best of my knowledge, that rollout was to both Samsung and Pixel devices running 11 and higher. So slightly limited in the beginning, but what we wanted to do was we wanted to kind of roll it out a little bit more gradually, because this is like a big, like a big change. Understanding that with a big change, potentially there's risk. Even though we had very thoroughly vetted it with, with you and with our trusted tester community, we just wanted to be careful and deliberate. So you could kind of think of the Pixel and the Samsung rollout as a bit of the preview, and then starting in the fall with the next version of Android, any device on Android 12 or higher running Talkback 9.1 or higher will have the new multi-finger gestures.
So in other words, though, it's not going to trickle down to Android 11, right?
It will not. And I can explain a little bit why. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, I think that will make sense, because that would help our listeners or our readers understand what's going on, because we don't want people to keep on holding out hope that, the Android 11 is going to be working with these multi-finger gestures, and then getting disappointed that it doesn't.
Yeah. Totally understand that. So, basically, as I mentioned before, Talkback is, it's a complex system. It's effectively an OS or a system UI for displayless operation, right? And so it's actually made up of two big architectural components in Android. One is basically an accessibility service, which is akin to an app, and two is the Android framework. And so gesture detection and all of the work that enables you to basically touch a screen and for the operating system to recognize that's, a one finger press and hold, a two finger press and hold, like one finger swipe down and left. All of that work is done within the Android framework. And so it's basically, it's updatable pretty much on the same release cycle as Android as a whole. Now, there are sometimes ways of backporting, and I can't make a promise, because up until now, we think it might be a little too complex to backport to 11, but I'm hearing from you that it's important to the community, so it's something that I can promise to look into, but I can't promise that we're going to do that. I can absolutely promise that the multi-finger gestures will be available to any updated phone or OEM on 12 Android and higher, and Talkback 9.1 and higher.
Thank you so much, Brian. That really helps explain it.
So, my question is that a couple of years ago, I was thinking of when the Talkback teams thinks of, releasing a new feature to Talkback. Are there any things that you put in consideration regarding other stuff? Before releasing the multi-finger gestures. What did you put in consideration regarding other applications, regarding users, regarding devices, and everything?
Yeah, so I mean, I think when we think about certain principles with rolling out a new gesture, like rolling out additional or new gestures, right? And basically, we as users, we want to make them easy to learn, easy to use, and easy to remember, as well as like the most impactful. And so let me take that last piece first. So for the most impactful, what's really important is like you could go crazy with gestures, right? Like you could assign a gesture to like almost anything in the system, right? And so what we wanted to do was make sure the most difficult actions or the actions that required the most steps had um, the right gesture assigned to them so that the gesture can have the biggest bang for the impact. And to give you an example of that is a very common operation, a very frequent operation is stopping and starting media playback. So Spotify, YouTube, like any video, any audio, right? And if you have to like wake your screen up and like swipe and traverse linearly to the play button that's in the middle of the video, then it's like that's a very inefficient task using a screen reader, right? Whereas if all you have to do is double tap and hold um, with a single gesture, then we've made a really efficient and really bad experience a really efficient and really good experience. So those are some of the things that we think about when we're considering how we like design a gesture system, number one, and then number two, how how we take that kind of holistic system design and apply it to the sort of the things that will have the biggest impact.
Yeah, so actually, I do agree with you there. Like, I do remember when I was younger, I was using Talkback. I always was kind of, it was kind of hard to me, even if it's not right now, to open the. It was called the global contact menu back then. I was like, oh, how can I open this? It's so hard to open, and I remember like there were a lot of people who were used to explain to me like it's just writing down. I was like, no, it's hard to do it, but afterwards when I used when I got used to like the gestures, even when I try to change them and make them much more customizable, I feel like I always go back to the normal default gestures that are actually set in Talkback. So yeah, I mean, I have a little question. It's kind of weird, but I mean, you mentioned that you're a sighted person, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So what was like as a sighted person? What was the hardest challenge that you've actually went through? Since like through your 2 years in Talkback, working on Talkback and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just I think the hardest thing for me was like kind of like I sort of get screen readers now, and I sort of get and I'll never get it. Like I'm never going to be some of the people that I work with and some of the folks in the community who are just like so amazing in terms of like how like the rate at which they're able to listen to content like 2, 3, 4, 5x. It's incredible. Or the rate at which they're able to like perform gestures. Like I'm never gonna.
100%.
Yeah, I'm never gonna be like I'm never gonna be that. That's never going to be me. But like I sort of get the 101 I think the hardest thing for me was in the very beginning. Like I just didn't get the screen reader at all. I think Talkback's tutorial, when I tried to go through the tutorial in the beginning, I didn't get it at all. And so that was also one of the things we redid in
Yes,
Talkback
you did.
9.1, because I'm like, you know what, we shouldn't greet the user with, hey, you just came out of high school, now you're in a PhD program. Like it doesn't work like that. It's more like, hey, it should be more like, hey, you just came out of, high school. Now we're going to put you in a 101. So we like a 101 grade. So we basically really rethought the tutorial, and we rethought it, along the idea or along the lines of like, hey, let's give people just enough information to become like basically proficient in talkback. It's not about comprehensivity of like you're going to become an expert overnight, but the tutorial in the beginning should be for that person who is new to the product, right? And so I think when I stepped into that role about 2 years ago, um, having to learn it from scratch was really daunting and really difficult. And you could imagine, and I have sight, so I can, it was still difficult, and I could look at the display, right? So you could imagine how difficult that would be for somebody who, like me, came to um, the screen reader later in life, and didn't have sight, right? So we want to kind of think of that user too.
Brian, thank you so much for mentioning that tutorial, because it's one of those things that I usually refer people to, besides, of course, referring them to our mailing list, which is doing a great job, for basic Android and getting started in Android. And I pride ourselves as being the only blindness related Android focused podcast. And so we're so excited about that. And we talk about these things and we say, hey, you want to first of all get started by practicing those tutorials or those practice gestures found within the TalkBack itself. And, probably it's the only screen reader that has that. And I'm proud to say that because it is true. And so anyone getting started with Android, that's a good place to get started. And then when you have additional questions, of course, you know where to find us, blindandroidusers.com.
So I've got some questions. My first question is, in India, we are getting a lot of like questions in the Android community of India. They say that the trusted program is only to US and why it is not to India. So is there any idea when it will be open to India and other parts of the world?
Yeah, so we are aware of that, and I personally am very keen on seeing us expand the program to be more representative of our global set of users. And I think India would be an absolutely awesome market for a whole bunch of reasons. I don't have a time frame for that yet, but that is something we're keen on doing at some point.
So my next question is, now there are a lot of foldable phones coming, some from Samsung. Does TalkBack support foldable phones? Like, can someone go to the market and purchase a phone, although they are expensive, but can they do that, and will TalkBack support it?
I don't know the answer to that question off the top of my head. Talkback should work for most journeys on a foldable, just like out of the gate, but there may be some fit and polish issues. And I know that foldables will be a focus for our team starting in the second half of this year.
Great.
But I
And
also
bringing
can't answer for Samsung, because Samsung, they may have modified a lot of, since we make TalkBack open source, a lot of OEMs and manufacturers will take the open source version of TalkBack and adapt it. And Samsung may have done that. They may not have done that. I simply don't know and can't say.
that is nice. So the last question is, like, I don't know if this can be aired or if you want to talk about it, but what are some of the features that the listeners can stay tuned for, maybe this year or maybe Android 12 or something in TalkBack?
Yeah. So one of the reasons why we don't necessarily telegraph the new features that that we're working on is because, when you're working on something new, there's always some risk, and so there's always a chance, right? And so one of the things we're very intentional about is not oversetting expectations. We'd rather kind of be more conservative with like the expectations that we set, and then over deliver. On our trusted tester forum, we're very kind of candid. I think Warren will tell you, like, I'll pretty much tell you straight up. But our trusted tester community is under non-disclosure agreement, and they're also basically the people with whom we're developing the product, right? I can tell you things that I would like to work on and things that I think are important, and I'm happy to hear your feedback on if you think those are the right areas. So I think there's three main areas that we can improve in. So one area is just like overall performance, like having a faster, snappier, more responsive talkback. So that's not a new feature, but that's core to the entire product and and every feature, if you will. One, two, improving input. So making sure that editing, selection, cut, copy, paste, interacting with the assistant, like all of those things work in a more efficient and more expected way. So that's kind of the second thing. And then like the last thing that I would love to work on is solving a simple but vexing problem, and that's unlabeled stuff. And by unlabeled stuff, I mean unlabeled images, unlabeled icons, unlabeled buttons, unlabeled photos, right? And having the ability to use
Screen
AI
recognition.
and yeah, exactly.
You
So
know,
those are like
and
the things that I think of, or that are our priorities. So like performance, improving input, and solving the unlabeled problem.
The
Well,
you know,
unlabeled problem is the biggest problem.
And
yeah.
actually, Brian, amen, amen, and amen the third time for all of those three, visions that you have. Because I tell you, most especially the editing feature or the selection, and this is something that I have been, hounding or pounding on for quite a while, and others like myself, is that question of being able to discriminately select something. I know it's working well in an edit field, but for instance, I am in my email message, my Gmail, or I'm on a website, on Talkback website, or one of the Google websites, or some other website, for example, and I'm reading a news article, and I want to copy just portions of that news article or whatever the case may be. As it is right now, the only way I could do that is to selecting everything, copy that, go paste it in an editor, and from there, chop off the portions that I'm not interested in. And I think that if we are able to get that capability of, discriminately selecting what we want, I think that would be huge. And I don't know, Brian, am I dreaming too much of climbing too high of a mountain here?
No, I mean, I think those are things that, we have to, we have like anything else, there's limited resources. And so you need to prioritize, right? And so in 9.1, we prioritized, basically the surfaces or the touch points, right? So menus, gestures, the tutorial settings, allowing voice input for voice shortcuts. So things that would kind of make the everyday operation of Talkback, better, more intuitive, easier, closer to the rest of the industry, blah, blah, blah. Right. So that was like our first thing we delivered, we delivered on that. And so I think in the coming, hopefully two or less years, we will have made significant progress on those three sort of thematic areas, like I said. So performance, input, and like AI and ML.
That's great. Another thing I'm going to talk about, Brian, and actually it's huge, and I want to congratulate you guys for doing this. This is very important, and that's the ability to mute talkback. This is something we've been asking for, and it got brought in without any fanfare. And I think the problem is that thing got mislabeled. And if you guys could look into it and relabel that thing to mute talkback, that would be great, because this is something that people are unaware of. And because it says stop talkback sound or something crazy like that, that shouldn't be. So now that we're talking about that, it is huge. And it's something that's worth the mention. And congratulations to you guys for implementing it, even though it has a wrong label.
I'm sorry it has the wrong label. I'm sorry it has the wrong label.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I like that's what I'm used to from Talkback. Even though sometimes I kind of get a little bit angry, and that's how users. I mean, sometimes users get a little bit, I'd say disturbed about if Talkback isn't getting updates regularly as we expect it to get. But what always happens is that we always get surprised by a lot of phenomenal updates and all the beautiful things that actually come out. Whether they're features, whether they're even bug fixes that people don't care about, which I really do, because sometimes there's stuff that are pretty technical, and you don't want to just bother the normal user with them, but people tend to not actually care about that, which I really do. So I love how amazing you do with Talkback. I know you work hard to do that. It's as you mentioned, Brian, it's not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy task, actually, but yeah, I mean, congratulations on the multi-finger gestures and stuff. It's very spectacular, in my opinion.
Thank you. Yeah, and I really appreciate everybody sticking with Android, sticking with Talkback, and providing the feedback. And I think that feedback is like our currency, right? It's like lifeblood for the product. So it's super important, and we're super grateful to have it. And we wish we could act on every piece of feedback as soon as we get it. We can't just to put that out there. But I can tell you, Mina and Saul and the rest of our team, we basically, all of the feedback from the Trusted Tester program, we take it, we collate it, we summarize it, we meet about it every week. And there's some things we're not going to be able to work on for a year. There's other things that we work on right away. And then there's things that fall in between that.
Thank you so much, Brian. And I am the self-appointed Android evangelist, and so all this is good news to me. And
well, we need more of you. And it would be one thing it would be really cool, Warren, that we should do is we should invite you to one of our team meetings, and
yeah, you guys should.
Just let me take a note on that, and you could just kind of come in and give your feedback to the team. We'll do a hearing from the self-appointed
evangelist.
Yeah, let's do that, man. Let's do that.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Brian. We are so thankful for you giving us your time to come and chat with us about these things. And I tell you what, our listeners are going to be excited about hearing about these things. And we appreciate you doing this. And we want you to know that we are behind you, totally behind you. And we've seen a lot of improvements, and we've seen the testament to your work. And we are here supporting what you are doing, and we're looking forward to greater things yet to come. And thank you so much for being with us here today.
A pleasure and an honor to be invited. Thank you for the thoughtful questions and discussion. And you always reach out. And thanks again.
All right. And Brian, when some new stuff comes out, that wasn't here today or isn't here today, we would like you to come back and let's talk about that new stuff, shall we?
Of course. Absolutely.
Great. Thank you so much, Brian. We appreciate you.
Yeah, we're
amazing. Likewise.
Thank you.
Thanks Thank you all. Thanks, Austin. Thanks, Miriam. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Warren.
Thanks for coming.
Okay. Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Okay, bye. And that was our interview with Brian.